the SMNI other platform or web page. Pag-isapin ko lang po.
We will comply, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, ang ano ko lang doon, observation ko, since the previous hearing, dati si Atty. Tolentino lang, no? Yung my guts to say na may disclaimer, parang ngayon mga board na, kaya na may disclaimer, alam namin yan, yung iba hindi namin napanood, pero kung totoo yan, kasi may transcript, parang wala kayong responsibilidad dun sa mga angkor nyo. Ang feeling ko is, kahit kung anong sabihin ng mga angkors nyo, and even those resource persons invited by your anchormen and women, parang wala kayong disiplina sa mga tao nyo. At ang malinaw dyan, hindi talaga, ako opan, hindi yan papasa sa Code of Ethics and Standards. But of course, pwede naman mag-file ng libel, di ba? Pwede naman, ang option dyan is, ng individual, na nagreklamo is to file proper court. But, of course, we have agencies of government that should regulate. Kaya nga may ATC na, may TLSCB, may KBP. Unfortunately, you disassociate your membership with KBP. So, punta mo may KBP. Yun lang, Mr. Chair. Kasi wala. Ang laging puntong nire-raise ng mga members nyo, especially those being tagged, red tag, ngayon, special rapporteur, yun yung tira sa special rapporteur. Ang sagot nyo, parang wala, okay lang. Kasi may disclaimer. Kasi right na na-anchor. Pwede ba yun? Diba? Anyway, Mr. Chairman, yung nasabi ko, nasa NTC yan. No? Check natin sa NTC with regards to actions that should be taken kung may mga agencies na kailangan nila involve natin. Para tapos ang daw cases that should be filed, para anyway, franchise ang pinag-usapan nito dito. Pero sa totoo after the franchise, just in case, it will be revoked, may other platform pa. Diba? And now, kung walang airing doon sa station, sa mga radio stations, nandiyan pa rin yung platform. If it's the government, whatever agency is concerned, dapat gumawa ng paraan. Gumawa ng hakbang. Hindi pwede hanggang wala. Parang walang magawa ang gobyerno sa SMNI. Kasi SMNI na naman ang next sa ngayon . Ang ganda yung conduct. Other radio stations, other TV stations, kahit yung mga establish na matagal ng radio station, sinusundan na nila yung Code of Ethics. Pero SMNI wala. Anyway, yun yung po sa akin niya, NTC, please submit the requested document before the next hearing. Kasi hindi pa naman ito last. Now, Chairman, may I ask the KBP? KBP, though, wala na, hindi na member yung SMNI with the KBP. But yung complaint against SMNI previously, ano yung updates doon?
Mr. Chair, insofar as the complaint filed against SMNI for acts that were allegedly committed while they were a member, KBP could take cognizance. However, since there is a pending case involving the same issues in other courts, procedurally KBP suspends its hearing to give way to the courts or government agencies to conduct their own investigation. Because we are self-regulation and courts of law are above us, Your Honor.
Yeah, correct, but you're Monday. Now there is a pending case outside, but there's a complaint also.
Yes, Your Honor, that's why I was explaining our procedure, that we suspend hearing because there is a pending case involving the same issues in the court with jurisdiction.
Who filed?
We were informed
You were informed.
no,
You don't have the document?
Your Honor, that was information given in this committee. The pending cases against SMNI.
I should already to make good present. Wala. Hindi, kasi Mr. Chairman, ako, I will not decide for my vote with regards to the revocation on the House Bill filed by Congressman Rules and Regs. Unless, hindi na talagang basis. Na, for example, NPC, medyo malinaw na yan. Pero wala pang finality. Now, KBP, I'm waiting for your final decision with regards to the case of complaint filed against the Smni para magamit namin dito. Eh naman yung regular court now. Mr. Chairman, in the next hearing, we will invite Mr. Domingo para malinaw. Kasi, ano ba yan? Purong siyapi ang case. And I will check also KBP. I will also check with the legal department in the House if there is a legal impediment with regards to that. Kasi, pag wala legal impediment, that it will not be a forum shopping, eh you better check with your legal also. Para pag nakita-kita tayo dito next hearing, kita magka-problema, baka mamaya kung pili ng legal dito sa House, is different from what you have said.
Mr. Chair, we note that we will take up the issues.
Thank you. Chairman, next. Last na, Chairman. Yung sa NTRCB, nandito ba sila? NTRCB, what is now the update of the case? Or the complaint?
The complaint po against the two Your Honor, the complaining party, the two TV programs po, given sa masa, para sa masa, and laban kasama ang bayan. We already decided on it, that we have, the decision was for 28 days suspension, including the preventive suspension. SMNI filed a notice of appeal, so we are going to transmit the record of the case to the Office of the President's Appeals Commission.
So, 28 days suspension,
Yes, Your Honor.
1 month. Anyway, pakiana, Mr. Chairman, I will direct the NTRCB to submit the copies of that complaint and at the same time the decision.
Yes, Your Honor.
Para lang po makita namin if there is a basis for the revocation of the franchise. Kasi yan ang patas tayo dito.
Yes, sir, on Your Honor, if I may, one of the findings of the board or the committee, Your Honor, is that there was a violation of Section 3 C of our mandate, with this in connection with Section 4 of the franchise, the legislative franchise, Your Honor. So it is one of our cases, Your Honor, also in the Section 4 franchise responsibility of it.
Okay, so SMNI appeal to the 28 days suspension.
Yes, Your Honor, it is already with the Office of the President.
When was that? Submitted to the office of the president.
They submitted their notice to appeal, Your Honor, last February 1, Your Honor. And we are in the process of transmitting the records of the case to the Office of the President.
Pero notice ka lang yan.
Yes, Your Honor.
Anyway, just submit those documents available with regards to the complaint and decision the NTRCB. Para makita lang po natin. Yan. Lalo na yung you mentioned about the violation of yung decision with regards to the violation of the provision 8 of franchise. Thank you.
Thank you, the Honorable Urbano. Now the Chair recognizes the Honorable Volta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. I came this afternoon, having read in our schedule, 4 items that my understanding is being taken up together in the committee. These are all serious resolutions, condemning fake news and revoking a legislative franchise, and that's why I came. And I want to make sure that whatever vote I put in is an informed one. I wanted to give SMNI all the opportunity to give us reasons not to support revoking a franchise, because the last thing I'd like to see are for officers, employees, families to be affected and lose their employment, just like what happened with abs-cbn. But I'm having a hard time accepting some of the responses from the representatives of the SMNI. But just to clarify, I understand, I think Attorney Tolentino, Mr. Chair, said that if anchors are doing things wrong, there's always, you can always address those issues by filing civil and criminal cases. So and I understand that, that goes for any industry. We all have a right to file civil, criminal cases, and I don't think that's a sufficient response. Does SMNI have, just like other media outlets that I think they have, which are internal guidelines to discipline, let's say, talent? Because I know on TV, if a talent, let's say, says something that's really, unacceptable, don't discipline a talent. Do you have any standards or guidelines for your own people?
Can I respond to that, Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair, I'd like to manifest that we submitted with the committee the TV and radio manual of operation, Mr. Chair. So we have a guideline, Mr. Chair.
No, specifically, Mr. Chair, if a anchor says something that just we all, 100% of the population agree is wrong. Let's say an anchor says, raping na lang inyo yan, di ba? Okay? So, without somebody filing a case or complaining to you, how would you pick that up and how would you discipline that talent?
Mr. Chair, we have an editorial board, Mr. Chair. And for details, Mr. Chair, the operation manager of SMNI can explain that in detail.
If I may, Mr. Chair, the Honorable Congressman, for the example is, of course, that's, kung meron po nagsabi ng sinabi din na raping na lang yan, hindi po yun uubra sa editorial policy ng SMNI. At sigurado po na kung hindi lang mapapatawag ay matatanggal po kung ganun po bigat po.
But how would, if let's say no one complained to you, how would you know one of your talent said something like that? Because kanina tinanong po kayo, I think 2 or 3 members asked you about certain statements that were, I personally felt wrong on red tagging, but none of you denied knowing those statements were made, so nothing was ever done. So how do you actually monitor? Because you apparently don't monitor your own shows and your own talent.
Your Honor, if I may. Every afternoon program po, Your Honor, may mga report na ginagawa yung mga producers namin, and assessment po. in regards sa problema po, andun sa may mga issues po or nilabag po yung mga anchors po namin, meron po yung team po namin na nag-monitor and maliban pa dun sa assessment bibigay ng mga producers po, papatawag po sila po.
So, Mr. Chair, then I would assume yung mga pinakita kanina, mga sinabi, at the judgment of your editors, hindi report yun kasi parang okay lang. Is that correct?
With regards po sir, kung comment lang po ang sinabi, komento po ng ating mga anchors po, merong certain gauge na ginagawa yung editorial policy po namin. Kung ito ay komento lang po ba, or kasi gaya po na sinasabi po namin, kung ano po yung komento ng mga anchors po namin, hindi po yung stand ng company. So kung meron po siyang sasagutin po yung mga anchors po namin, siya po magiging liable po sa mga sinasabi po niya. Your Honor, I'd like to clarify po. Iba po yung iba po yung pinapatakunan po natin kung ito po ay news program or kung ito po ay commentary ng mga programa. Kasi sa news po, hindi po pwede mag-comment po ang ating yung ating mga reporters. Iba po ang stand po natin dyan. But in terms of mga program katulad ng Laban Kasama ang Bayan, Pulso ng Bayan, commentary po ang mga programa ito, Your Honor. At may freehand po yung ating mga anchors po na magbigay ng komento kung ano po yung pinag-uusapan po nila. And yung komento po nila ay ito po ay personal opinion po ng mga anchors po namin. At kaya po sinasabi po namin, kaya po kami may disclaimer dahil kung ano man po ang opinion ng aming mga anchors, hindi po ito personal stand ng network po.
Okay, fair enough, Mr. Chair. So, may I ask, since you've been operational, I think it's 2-3 years, has there ever been a sanction or a penalty given to any talent that has a show?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
Congressman,
Please.
meron pong, number one, I just want to put on record that immediately after we received the cease and desist order from the National Telecommunications Commission, we have never violated transmission on digital channel 43 and all other format under the supervision of the National Telecommunications Commission. Now, going back to the question of Congressman Paul, Mr. Chairman, we have, as a matter of fact, in the case of Mr. Eric Celis, when he admitted, we conducted an internal investigation. However, the internal investigation was preempted when he appeared before this committee and admitted or uttered a statement that in effect is an admission of a violation. So we immediately imposed the maximum sanction provided for under the Manual of Operations of the Suarez Media Corporation, Mr. President.
So,
Which was? What was the?
Which was suspension,
How
Mr.
long?
10 days, Mr. Chairman.
and Mr. Chair,
Maximum yan 10 days. Maximum penalty para 10 days. Right?
and that's the maximum?
No, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Soltis said.
yes, over the last several days, we have amended some portions of our manual for disciplining employees. And we have imposed a varying sanctions with the maximum of expulsion or termination of services.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Sonsa.
Okay.
Honorable Daca, is there-
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, thank you for sharing that information. That helps this particular representation balance things. So I'm curious, was that sanction done before or after the video showed by the Honorable Raul Manuel?
with respect to the video presented by the Honorable Manuel, Mr. Chairman, I'm not quite certain whether this video were called from the social media platform, because as I said in the beginning, from the time we received the suspension order and the CDO, we ceased to transmit any broadcast on the regulated transmission platform as provided for in the franchise of the Suarez for Media Corporation, Mr. Chairman.
To clarify, so that video was done on a personal basis?
No, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I wish the Honorable Manuel can clarify where he called that video, whether that was from a broadcast through free-to-air or from the social media platform.
Sige, Mr. Chair, can we have Honorable Manuel clarify on that?
Yeah. Mr. Chair, the video was posted in the online accounts of SMNI on January 9, 2024.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so it appears now it was still in compliance with the NTC. We did not air it on transmitted platform on free-to-air. It was on social media platform.
So was it before or after your sanction, your 10-day suspension?
After.
It was done after the 10-day suspension. So something like that, may I ask, what would your plans be? You sanctioned in 10 days, and then you saw the video. What action can a company now take?
The sanction refers to free-to-air. The sanction, the social media kasi, hindi po namin pwedeng sagkain yung mga personal na ano nila, na pronouncement nila.
Pero Mr. Chair, talent po ninyo, kasi after the 10-day suspension, you're paying him again.
No, we're not airing, Mr. Chairman.
No, my question was not airing. My question is, what positive action will you take after you spend, I think, is he an employee, how do you call it, contractual, talent, or whatever?
He's a talent, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry?
He's a talent.
Talent, okay? So he has some sort of financial relationship with the company. You have supervision with that talent. You suspended it for 10 days. You were suspended by NTC, and then you see a video like that, I mean, I'm in a minority. I'm not here to defend the speaker, but having seen what Congressman Manuel showed in the video, I think it hurts the institution, not just the speaker. I'm defending the institution. So my question is, not whether you're gonna air it, so what sanction would you take now? Because it's germane to the issue whether you deserve to be revoked or not. So it's a management decision. Do you deserve to continue your franchise? It's not a hard question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. As a matter of fact, after I saw the video that was presented by the Honorable Manuel, I have called the attention of the chair of the editorial board. If it warrants, we will conduct another investigation and impose the necessary amended sanction as may be required.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. But it also highlights the fact that you're not really able to monitor your talent. Because it should not have taken a committee hearing to get a statement like that. Correct, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, as I said earlier, when matters does not, kung halimbawa po yung airing niyan ay nagkataon sa Channel 43, which is under the supervision of the National Telecommunications and pursuant to the franchise issued by the Honorable House, we will certainly take cognizance immediately. But since this is a social media platform, wala po kaming ano eh, wala po. Ang nire-recommend nga po ng aming law department at mga legal is kung may complainant, filean po ng kaso sila at papapanagutin po namin sila sa taas.
Sige, Mr. Chair. Fair enough. That episode was January 9th. To this particular member of the House, it's crystal clear to me that you need to have better monitoring and guidelines in disciplining your talent. Okay? I'll leave it at that because I have more questions.
For that, Mr. Chair.
Sige, Mr. Chair, I'll allow Attorney Tolentino to respond to that.
That January 2024 program is just a form of question. It's not a statement against the chair.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
It was a question, Mr. Chair, not a statement. I forgot, Mr. Chair, but it's a form of a question, Mr. Chair, not
Mr. Chair.
a statement. And granting it as a statement, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair,
granting it
I'll
as a
handle it.
statement, that is a personal opinion.
Mr. Chair, okay, no,
Will you have to send video?
yes, Mr. Chair, anyway, Mr. Chair, I have the floor. You're entitled to your opinion, and the fact that you have to say that, instead of, I wanted an opportunity for me to help SMNI. Now, with that statement, it just irks me. Instead of getting a no vote on revoking the franchise, you're defending it by saying, you know, nagpapalusot. You didn't have to do that, di ba? I don't think you're doing a good service as to this particular issue for SMNI. Whether it was in a formal statement, you're defending it, di ba? Anyway, Mr. Chair, because I don't know if we're voting today or it's gonna be more hearing. You know, it hurts me when people lose work. And I'm trying to find reasons not to support this particular House Bill 9710, but they're not helping. Anyway, let me move forward. I wanted clarity from any of the resource persons because I wanted to continue the line of Congresswoman Brosas, Chairman Paduano. I was somewhat surprised when NTC said that they can, let's say, shut down a website or whatever it is online, provided there's a determination from a law enforcement agency. So my question is, if let's say there's a website or a social media account that's advocating violence, or some sort of an account or site advocating drugs, di ba? Do you actually have to wait? Do you have the power to immediately make a decision? Kunyari, may website selling drugs, di ba? I think all of us will agree that's not acceptable. Would you have to wait for the PNP or the NBI to make a determination for you to shut down that website? Mr. Chair?
NTC.
Mr. Chair, if ever there's such thing, what we can do is we can take cognizance of such an activity online, and we deem it more appropriate to refer it to appropriate agencies to determine such the actions being shown online. We'll take cognizance of it, Mr. Chair, and bring it to the attention of appropriate agencies who may be able to evaluate it more thoroughly before we take action.
Okay, so meaning, Mr. Chair, NPC motu proprio cannot shut down anything online, correct? You would have to refer to someone else.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if we referring to if we are to go back po kasi dun sa mandate ng NTC.
No, I just, it's a yes or a no, so am I correct?
At this, right now, Your Honor, we are unable to.
Okay. Are there any government agencies that have the power to do that in their mandate? So, let's say, porn sites, trafficking sites, drug sites, ang dami po niyan eh. I've been told that many of the sites, social media accounts, are being closed. So, who's doing that?
Specific to your example, Your Honor, on say porn sites or similar sites like that. In this particular case, there's the OSAI, online sexual exploitation and abuse. These are laws that provide guidelines that these are illegal or unauthorized. So there are bases for us to take action on that once the appropriate agencies are able to determine such violations taking place online. Same is true like with all the
Okay, so it's criminal activity specific. There are certain laws that enable you to do that, like trafficking or sexual, what did you say, sexual
online sexual
abuse. You can, on your own, shut them down.
That is upon the determination of the appropriate agency enforcing the law,
Paren.
Mr. Chair.
Does the FCT have the power also to shut down certain online sites?
In this instances, Mr. Chair, it was the NTC that, it was forced to the
So
NTC.
NTC. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Mr. Chair, I came a little late. I saw on the resource person list, SEC. With your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, can I ask the SEC, because I remember in previous hearings, there were allegations of charter violations, franchise violations, corporate. So can the SEC share any findings that they had since then?
Mr. Chair, based on the records that we submitted to the Honorable Committee, the SEC found that there were some violations for failure to comply with the reportorial requirements. And this is the main mandate of the SEC in regards or as regards the regulation of existing corporation. And our records also show that we have already penalized the corporation for these findings of violation.
Well, okay, I mean, a lot of corporations do that, and you just penalize them and they pay that penalty. So there's nothing more serious that's been uncovered by SEC, other than late filing of mandatory reports.
So far, Mr. Chair, that is the case with the subject corporation, Mr. Chair.
Okay, for the MTRCB, let's say the complaint was found, was final, secretary, the complaint was valid. What steps can MTRCB do? The Honorable Paduano asked, and it's been appealed, but let's just say that there was a final decision, let's say, against, what can MTRCB do?
There is a complaint, Your Honor, we refer it to our adjudication hearing committee. But if you already have a decision on final and executory order, you, our monitoring and inspection unit monitors the set TV program or movie from showing or, yes, Your Honor, from showing. But,
If you did that-
we actually just, sorry, Your Honor, we just actually found that we can actually
Well, okay, and so you would be considered a law enforcement agency that can make the final determination. So NTC can now do what needs to be done. Okay, my last question, Mr. Chair. Would the NTC or any of the religious persons know, other than ABS-CBN, which was different, ABS, their franchise expired and was not renewed. In this case, for this particular House Bill 9710, it's an existing franchise, and the House Bill is advocating for revocation. In the history of our country, has there ever been any legislative franchise for radio TV that has been revoked? Would you have that historical record? Anyone, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, may I reply? Based on the records of the PDP since its inception in 1974 and the start of the issuance of legislative franchise, there is no incidence of Congress revoking a franchise. As correctly pointed out, Your Honor, the case of ABS-CBN referred to 1921.
Thank you for that. Mr. Chair, can I ask KBP, would you be aware of any, let's say, outside the Philippines, other countries? And what would be the standard? What would be sufficient justification? Are there any international good practices that we can share to guide members on whether to support or not this particular bill?
I may stand corrected on this, Your Honor. But the regulatory environment in different jurisdictions, different from the Philippines, where a legislative franchise is a condition for the issuance of a broadcast license. In fact, that was the situation in the Philippines pre-martial law, where the Broadcast Media Council were issuing broadcast licenses to operate radio and television stations. It was only post-martial law where the legislative franchise was required for a franchisee to be able to get a permit from the NTC. In the United States, the regime is different. The radio and television licenses are issued by the FCC, but there's no requirement for a legislative franchise. That is also, to my recall, Your Honors, that is also true in other countries in Asia, that the legislative franchise is not required.
Are there any countries, Mr. Chair, that's similar to the Philippines that requires a congressional franchise?
Unfortunately, I'm not aware of any.
Okay, but yeah, thank you. Thank you for your sharing that information. Would the FTC know, has there ever been a similar franchise that's been revoked?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To our knowledge as well, we are not aware of any franchise that has been revoked up to this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Last one, Mr. Chair. I wanted to give Attorney Tolentino an opportunity from one lawyer to another. We learned in law school that free speech is not really free. There's a limit to it. I'm sure Attorney Subico knows that. But the classic case, Mr. Chair, is you cannot shout in a crowded movie house, there's a fire, if there's no fire. Just like if I shouted right now, there's a bomb in the room, knowing that there's no bomb, that's not covered by free speech. So I'm curious, Mr. Chair, to give you an opportunity, whether it's your personal or company position, where do you draw the line?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to manifest a Supreme Court jurisprudence about legislative franchise and also in relation to a freedom of press and freedom of expression. This is not my personal opinion. but is based on a Supreme Court jurisprudence approved by the Supreme Court last 2021. The Supreme Court said that a franchise constitutes a property right, which cannot be arbitrarily revoked or forfeited without compliance with the due process law. It means a franchise cannot be revoked or forfeited without undergoing procedure of due process, which must be observed, which necessitates notice and hearing conducted through a court trial. So not a legislative investigation, because legislative investigation is only in aid of legislation. And second, Mr. Chair, it states that the determination of the right to exercise of a franchise, whether or not to enjoy that privilege to be forfeited, shall be subject to a co-warranto proceeding in a regular court, Mr. Chair. And this is a Supreme Court jurisprudence that we believe is a proper way, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Attorney Mark Tulay.
I'm winding down, Mr. Chair. Thank you for sharing that. I'm happy to hear that because
I can explain.
Perhaps the council, yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, we filed when the NTC issued a 30-day suspension against SMNI, preventive suspension, the first 30 days. We filed a petition for certiorari revision mandamus and prayer for TRO with the Court of Appeals. But the Court of Appeals denied it on the ground that we failed to file a motion for reconsideration. So it was denied not based on merits. So again, the NTC suspended again for give us indefinite suspension. There's no date how many days. So this time we filed a motion for reconsideration and now pending with the NTC. So that is the status with respect to the NTC. But I need to put on record that we filed a before this development, Mr. Chair, we filed a motion for bill of particulars because the order of NTC is not clarified what are our violations, but it was also denied. We also filed a motion for inhibition because they are also the complainant, so we can expect them to.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just do not like the folks.
Thank you very much, Attorney Tutino.
So, Mr. Chair, okay, so the Court of Appeals was indeed regarding that proceeding. There was already a filing for the CA and it was denied for failure to file the MR. Mr. Chair, the good attorney mentioned earlier that there was an MR file.
We also filed an motion for reconsideration
After the fact.
No, to the order giving the order issued by the NTC giving indefinite suspension for the operation of SMNI.
But there was no MR during the initial 30-day suspension.
No MR. We go directly to the Court of Appeals.
Okay, so yun yung issue po natin. Due process was afforded, but they skipped it. In fact, I believe the wording of the CA was that the SMNI cannot allocate upon itself the decision of whether or not an MR is required. Is that correct, Mr. Chair? That was part of the 5-page resolution.
Mr. Chair, we did not file an MR because we believe that the case of SMNI is part of the exception. Because time is of the essence, because they, as an NTC, immediately suspended us without giving us an opportunity to explain.
Mr. Chair, and the CA disagreed. And then
And the CA said that no, you need to file an MR first.
So, na-deny po ng CA.
But not
So,
based
I think
on
this is
merit, Mr. Chair.
not based on merit. And exactly, Mr. Chair, I think that is vital because SMNI is now harping on due process. But it seems that they are not following the procedures that are being offered, whether it's under this Congress, whether it's by the NTC. They are, that word really stuck with the CA, they are arrogating talaga upon themselves, their own interpretation of all of these rules and whatnot. So, Mr. Chair, with that, I want to go now to, kasi like I mentioned earlier, this bill was supposed to be on the legal. But I'm surprised to see that nangyayari pa rin yung mga issues natin sa Section 47. Mr. Chair, may we ask now, how does SMNI treat production of their shows? I know we touched on this very briefly. Is there a separate corporation that deals with production? Perhaps we can ask yung sa operations mo nila.
Operations.
Mr. Chair, there's all production is done by
Ano po?
Lahat po ng productions ng programa ay produced po ng SMNI.
Mr. Chair, all production is done by SMNI.
Correct, it's
So-
not a co-pro.
It is
It
not
is
co-pro.
studio produced or,
So all provisions of their franchise would necessarily apply to what they do as a production company. Is that correct, Mr. Chair? So, Mr. Chair, how now do we differentiate between the two? Kasi I believe a while ago, their consultant was saying na whatever it is that we're commenting here would not apply to productions they've made because it's in YouTube. Tama ba, Mr. Chair? May we ask the consultant, Mr. Sonsa?
Jason, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Here's the question.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you mentioned earlier, upon prodding by one of our colleagues here, regarding the production of Mr. Senis, the video that was posted in that issue. And the defense that you posited was that you have no hand on that because it is not free TV. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
My statement, if I may recall correctly, Mr. Chair, is insofar as violation of the franchise with respect to free TV, whether it's radio or television, we have not violated any transmission procedure.
Mr. Chair, so you're mentioning the procedure to highlight the fact that you have not violated the suspension order, correct?
Yes.
That is the crux of the
Suspension
issue.
and the CDO.
Suspension in the CDO, you're talking about, you are relying on YouTube to go around the issue of the suspension order. But the question, Mr. Chair, is that when it comes to production, is it not a shared responsibility? Not even shared, it is the responsibility of SMNI under their franchise. Because as you mentioned, there's no separate corporation for production.
Yes.
So whether or not it is aired, I understand, Mr. Chair, honestly, that tama po yung sinasabi niya. Because it is through YouTube, there is no transgression of the cease and desist order. But regarding the sections 4 and 7 on the substance of the production, it is something that has been skirted all day long, Mr. Chair. Kasi kung tinatanong po natin dito, as succinctly pointed out by the Honorable Daza, if that wasn't free to air, where would they draw the line? Because apparently, if you take it out, if the FEC suspends it, wala na po doon, they feel that, and they are still producing porno, they're not airing it, but they're producing the content, that there's no need to draw any line. Because after all, do a crime, they'll just file a case after. I think, Mr. Chair, that's our problem here, the way by which SOASO goes about their business. It really shows impunity. It's a culture of impunity, a culture of walang pakialam, anything goes. So that's why, Mr. Chair, I think, and I hope this persuades my fellow members here, that this is an obligation that we have as members of Congress. Ito na po yung public interest, common good, general welfare portion that is being referred to by the Constitution. That, again, I will cite it again, neither any franchise or right be granted except under the condition that it shall be subject to amendment, alteration, or repeal by Congress when the common good so requires. They are skirting provisions on the NTC. They are focusing only on, they have no more obligations kasi hindi na to on air. They're focusing on YouTube. But yet they still go about doing the same things. Mr. Chair, maybe ask the Chief of Operations again. They are aware that since SOASO is not a separate corporation, they are bound by sections 4 and 7 of the franchise.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair. And they also understand that under sections 4 and 7, they have the duty, self-regulated duty actually, to provide balanced programming.
Yes, ma'am.
So how do we now reconcile that responsibility to the public of giving balanced programming, avoiding fake news, avoiding red tagging with what is being done now? Mr. Chair, may I ask, okay, one more. We mentioned during the last hearing, they mentioned that there is an ethics committee, or what do you call that? What is your grievance committee po? The question is directed to the Chief of Operations.
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Ano po yun? Or what is the committee that you have
Ethics
for?
and Grievance Committee.
Ethics and Grievance Committee. So when it is not on free-to-air TV, does it not apply to the produced? Because I remember the other board member mentioned, the member of the board mentioned that whether this is on air no or on YouTube, lahat ng ginagawa nila sa programa would be at the end of the day subject to a report. of which supposedly this Ethics and Grievance Committee would deliberate. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
And this, despite being on YouTube, should have gone through the Ethics and Grievance Committee. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
It would definitely go through that after this hearing.
No, after this hearing. Mr. Chair, may I ask my good colleague, the Honorable Manuel, ano ba yung date nung video that they...
January 9, 2024 na
January
post.
9. It is now February 7. Bakit ngayon lang po? Isn't it supposed to be the whole purpose of a production report is that the moment that that was produced, it will be reviewed by your committee, subject to action. Bakit ngayon pa lang po? Just because ngayon lang nakita?
Mr. Chairman, we haven't received complaints with regards to broadcast.
Mr. Chair, I think the whole point of the committee is to avoid complaints po, no? That's why you have your production team report on it right after production. Before anyone has seen it, before anyone has been offended, before any crime is committed. Mr. Chair, ang problema po natin ito, dito, most honestly, yung grievance committee seems to be a reactionary one. You might as well call it the Congressional Inquiry Response Committee. Kasi, yun ang nangyayari po, no? They only constituted the committee last hearing after the fact already of the issue of the budget of Congress. And then now, they are going to tell us that the grievance committee will act on it only after it was brought up by Representative Manuel, after the fact of the offense. So, Mr. Chair, this goes back to my point, no? Na yung, the way by which they handle their business, it's very, hands off. And I think this really goes into the provision on the common good that we should respond to. The other matters, Mr. Chair, I just want to reiterate na po, no? Because this was already mentioned time and time again. Section 10, 11, and 12. I'd like to ask the SEC, because perhaps it does not give a full picture. Earlier, the Honorable Tasa asked you about the offenses of the So-and-so Media Corporation, and it seemed to give off the idea that it is only late filing. But is it not during the last deliberation, we found that they filed with the SEC, what they filed there was different from what they filed in the committee. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
So I would say that this is not only a late filing issue.
Yes, Mr. Chair, what I shared earlier to the commission was based on the records, but I confirmed that during the previous deliberation, we made a manifestation that there was a discrepancy in the filing that were made to the SEC as well as to the Honorable Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of course, we're not pinpointing that answer. No, we understand your answer because on the part of the SEC, what you only see was a late filing. But taken together with what was filed with the committee, nakita ko natin there's discrepancy, which goes into the substance of those reports. I will not belabor the point, no, but we've already, as shown before by PowerPoint, the issues of the controlling interest. This was something that was verified by the SEC. They transferred interest without asking permission of Congress, again verified by the SEC. Even the change of the executive pastor of People of Jesus Christ from non-stock to corporation sole was very, maybe ask again, just for everyone here, SEC maybe ask the point made out by the Congresswoman Nograles regarding the change from the executive pastor to corporation sole regarding the requirement of the there was an issue there, was there not, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair, those were information that we shared that reflects the records of the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to talk about that photo, just because for those who might be hearing about it for the first time, they might think that the transgressions were merely late submissions. But it really goes into the substance of the report. And it goes into what I'm saying, the culture of which Smni operates. It's really haphazard. So I think to protect the interests of the common good, I really seek the urgent approval of my bid. So I think there might be others who would like to ask, so I would like to ring the floor. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much, the proponent, the Honorable Ramon Rodriguez Gutierrez of One
Mr. Chair, with your indulgence and the indulgence of the gentleman from One Rider, can we ask the SEC, because it was just highlighted that there were discrepancies in records. Is that within their authority to investigate if there were any sort of misrepresentation or fraud? Because it was just highlighted just now, and no, that's when the Honorable Kim was sitting next to me, and I remember she was one of the members who pointed that out, I think, in the last hearing. Could we ask the SEC?
Yes, Mr. Chair, can I provide context on what happened in this particular matter? So what happened in this matter is that when we were asked when we were asked to verify a particular submission, we presented to the honorable committee the records that were with the SEC. Unfortunately, it was also discovered that the same document that was filed with the honorable committee was not the same document that was filed with the SEC. So that was the discrepancy. And the reason for that is under the legislative franchise of the subject committee, they are required to file reportorial requirements with the Honorable Congress. So that was the context why why the Honorable Committee discovered that there was different documents, same documents, different files.
Okay, well, thank you for that background, Mr. Chair. So my question is, because the commission, you're a quasi judicial type of body, the SEC. You have regulatory and investigative powers. Now that you've been put on notice of these discrepancies, aren't you duty bound to do some sort of an investigation and report at least to yourselves and then share it with the committee?
Mr. Chair, there is actually a new provision in the revised corporation code, which provides that any person who certifies in a document required to be filed with the commission to a false or misstatement or a erroneous data can be held criminally liable. So that's one of the things that the SEC has the power to look into. But since it's a criminal case, what the procedure is, the SEC will need to file a proper or file a proper endorsement before the Department of Justice.
And have you started the process, or do you see a need to start the process?
Sir, personally, Mr. Chair, certainly there's a need, and this is a matter that is within the jurisdiction of our Enforcement and Investor Protection Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Portasa. The chair recognizes the harder working team from the second district of Marikina, the Honorable Stella Luz. Welcome back to the committee hearing of the Transport. So is undone, the Honorable Gaza. Any other question by any other member? The Honorable Kimbo, of course, is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, kung natatandaan po natin, medyo matagal na nung huli natin hearing, ang naging issue po natin kay Casa Elisa ay ang kanyang refusal to reveal to us yung kanyang source of information. Dahil nga doon, nagkaroon tayo ng napakaraming problema, no? At dahil din doon, ang isa sa mga nakuha po natin na documents ay yung kanilang manual. At in fairness naman, nakapag-produce naman sila ng manual. At nakita po natin doon na merong very specific guidelines kapag merong source na revealing the source may threaten or cause harm to the source. At kung pwede ko pong i-share sa inyo, ganito po ang naka-indicate sa manual. Correspondents and reporters should not hide their source of a news story unless revealing it may threaten or cause harm to the source or lead to a halt in the flow of information to the correspondent. In such cases, the source should be revealed to the highest editorial authority, who should decide whether or not to broadcast the story and take responsibility for airing it. When airing it, it is sufficient to say SSMC, SMNI was informed that, etc., etc. So, ang tanong po natin is, ginawa po ba ito ni Caceres? So, ang unang tanong, at that point in time, sino po yung highest editorial authority? Anong petsa po? Kailan po niya sinabihan itong highest editorial authority? Ano po ang ginawa ni highest editorial authority doon sa information na yan? Ano po ang naging advice ni highest editorial authority kay Caceres?
Yes, Mr. Chair, yung binasa po ni Congresswoman is for correspondents and reporters. Please take note po na si Ka Eric is not a correspondent or a reporter, he's a commentator of program po. So yung po kanyang ginawa sa live broadcast, nevertheless, ay dumaan po siya ng investigation and like we said earlier, nagkaroon po siya ng 10-day suspension from broadcast.
Ibahan ng correspondence in a commentator.
At Mr. Chair, ibig sabihin po nun, just because iba ang tawag sa akin, hindi ako correspondent, hindi ako news anchor, ibig sabihin nun, mas mababa ang standards na ma-apply sa akin. Yun bang ibig sabihin nun? Diba? So, paki-explain po, una, ano po pagkakaiba ng, anong tawag sa kanya ulit?
Commentators po
Commentator.
sila.
Anong pagkakaiba ng commentator sa correspondent or news anchor? That's the first question. Pangalawa, ano ngayon ang standards applicable to a commentator? Wala po akong nakitang separate standards para sa commentator. In a situation katulad nito, the fact na naisulat dito ang gagawin kapag may ganitong sitwasyon, ibig sabihin nun, anticipated ninyo na nangyayari ito all the time. Kaya nga maganda, di ba Mr. Chair, na nakalinaw anong gagawin kasi anticipated. Ibig sabihin nun, anticipated din na mangyayari ito sa mga commentator. So sa unang tanong po, pagkakaiba ng commentator sa correspondent?
Mr. Chair, ang unang tanong po, ang mga commentators po, ang mga news correspondents at mga news writers, sila po ay news writers o news reporters po ang kasulat ay nagre-report, dumadaan po sa mga editors, lahat ng kanilang isinusulat bago po ito lumabas sa TV, whereas ang mga commentators po, ang kanilang mga topics ang aming nakikita kung ano ang kanilang pag-uusapan, ngunit ang nangyayari po ng kanilang sinasabi sa live broadcast ay hindi po namin lahat masasala. At kaya po nangyari na after po ng live, ay dumaan po ng proseso ng investigasyon si Ka Eric, subalit ito po ay na preempt na rin po ng investigation dito sa Kongreso, but nevertheless, ito po ay nagpatuloy at siya po ay dumaan sa 10-day suspension. Hindi po ibig sabihin na hindi po siya dumaan sa proseso ng pagdidisiplina.
Sa makatuwid, kung ikaw ay commentator, hindi ka napapaloob sa kahit na anong authority. Kahit na ano, pwede mong sabihan, Mr. Chair. Ganun ang intindi ko po sa sinasabi ninyo. Kasi kapag correspondent ka or news anchor, ikaw ay mayroong nire-reportan na editorial authority at mayroong rules. Kapag commentator ka, there's no such thing. So, ang ibig sabihin nun, pag malasin ka at nag-intervene ang Kongreso, saka ka lang paparusahan. So, can you imagine, Mr. Chair? Ang hirap naman, di ba? Napupunta sa atin ang burden ng ganitong sitwasyon, di ba? Na hindi naman yata pwede yan, di ba? So, tama ba na walang standards para sa commentator?
Mr. Chair, can I answer the honorable
Yes,
Kimbo?
Mr. Sonsa,
Yes. Mr. Chairman, ang nire-refer po kasi doon sa binasa niyo kanina, doon po sa staff ng News and Public Affairs Department, reporters, correspondents. With respect to anchors or talents, sila po ay subject pa rin sa provisions which are provided in their separate contracts. Yung pagdisiplina, halimbawa may violation sila sa franchise, abay, siyempre, kinakailangan dumaan sila sa pagdisiplina. Kaya nga ako nagkaroon ng investigasyon. Hindi nangangahulugan na hindi po sila subject to disciplinary action. Mr. Chair.
well, I think, Mr. Sonsa, with the pag ko, hindi man natin pwedeng hingin lahat ng mga kontrata ng lahat ng mga talents ninyo. Pero pag ko, I think they're all airing under one program, under one network. So, I'm pretty sure that everybody toes the line with one set of rules. Then yung hindi ko maintindihan, but all of a sudden, pag ganun pala, pag meron kang titirahin, tawagin mo lang commentator para iwas pusoy na lang ang SMNI o any network for that nature. Hindi mo pwede. You know, you cannot hide under that like yung mga disclaimer. Parang sabi na pag ang isang network, kunyari, Channel 7, may disclaimer kami dyan kaya hindi pwedeng hapulin abs-cbn ang sasabihin ito. Hindi mo pwede. Diba? I mean, you know, you cannot hide under this. And somehow, we cannot also, it's hard to comprehend. You just have the Congresswoman Kimbo na how can you have a different set of rules sa commentator at sa news reporters? Parang baba naman ang tingin natin sa mga commentator. Pag ganyan ho ang gawin mo niya. Kasi ho, ang gagawin nyo, hindi persona ang gagawin nila. Kaya gawin nyo na kung ano gusto nyo gawin dahil hindi naman kayo covered ng manual. Eh, ba't pa kayo nagpakita ng manual? Ang pinag-uusapan si Ka Eric, tapos nagbigay kayo ng manual na ito yung proseso namin. Tapos now you tell us, it does not refer to Ka Eric. Pwede ba yun? Eh, di ba, yun yung basihan ng usapan, yung kaya nga humingi mo ng manual, mabuti o maging klaro lang po tayo.
Opo, klaro naman po. Hindi po sanay kayo sa kalakaran sa industriya. Mas mabigat po ang pagdisiplina sa talent and anchor kaysa doon sa mga regular correspondent, reporters, writers. Doon sa mga nagtrabaho sa industriya, naintindihan po nila yun. Kasi ang talent at immediately pwedeng tanggalin yung sila sa trabaho sa kontrata nila eh. Hindi katulad sa dadahan mo talaga sa proseso kasi
Pero the way it's explained to us, parang baliktad.
hindi kaya po tinutuloy.
Meron po kayong rules pagdating po sa reporter, pero pag correspondence, pero pagdating sa commentators, wala. Kasi nung kakasabi lang ako kanina ng operations, which tapos binigyan nyo ng 10-day suspension. Bakit yung binigyan 10 days suspension? Wala pala siyang hindi pala siya covered dun sa manual niya. I mean, it does not make sense. And that's what Congressman Daxo was saying earlier. Now, the more you have to be very careful kasi you're now kind of contradicting each other. So, mag-ingat na po tayo dun sa mga kasi syempre, we would like to discuss this fairly and we're trying to understand how you operate. And the Honorable Kimbo, who has attended all the hearings of this committee, has always been fair in her assessment and has always been objective in her questions. So the Honorable Kimbo, you still have the floor. You still have any?
Well, actually, Mr. Chair, gusto ko pa sana magtanong dito tungkol sa kanilang code of ethics. Pero sa totoo lang po, walang gana na po, di ba? Kasi, magpapalusot lang naman po, di ba? Kung ganito yung rule, ang sasabihin lang naman, papalitan lang naman ang tawag dun sa imbis na commentator, imbis na reporter, or yung sa actor, tawagin commentator. Hindi naman pala code of ethics ito, kung hindi cheat code. Huwag na lang po. Thank you na lang po. I will just yield to the next. Thank you po, Mr. Chair. Salamat.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sarah Kimbo. The Honorable Ina Pancho, recognized from Bulacan.
Mr. Chair, makikita po natin na in any company, there's always a chain of command. So pag nag-utos ka, dire-diretso yun, responsible ka to whatever action ng tao mo. Pero nakikita po natin dito na parang hindi po nasusunod yung chain of command natin eh. So siguro po one of the suggestions lang po natin na siguro next time when we grant o give franchise to any company, siguro yung disclaimer tanggalin na po natin. Kasi pagdating po sa pagpapalabas, pag pumapasok ka advertisement, kumikita, everybody's happy. Pero pag nakasira ka na ng image ng tao, para ba, oops, teka, kailan yan? May disclaimer kami. So siguro next time, Mr. Chair, review natin at tanggalin na po yun.
But I know sa mga major networks, so kaya rin sila ng tawag sila. Whether reporter ka, field reporter, news anchor, correspondent, hindi ko pwede lahat sa yung they follow one rule and the rule of truth. So, I thank you very much, Honorable Tina Pancho. There's no other member that would like to speak. Okay. Anyway, your attendance is already in the floor.
Yes, thank
Yes,
you.
the Honorable Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, sinasabi kanina, no, yung suspend lang ay yung free air. Pero the same content pa rin, yung ini-air nila, sabi niya, at follow lang no, yung ating kasama sa Jerez. The same content, walang pagbabago. Yung ginagawa nung sa free air na ginagawa nung series at saka ng Baloy, at saka sa online, at saka doon sa free air, Mr. Chair. Kaya parang misrepresent nila, no? Yung pag by continuing these programs through SOCMED, okay lang, parang sinabi ko ng Pacho, basta kumikita, okay lang, sige lang. Tuloy-tuloy lang kayo kung ano yung sinasabi. Basta tanggap yan ng mga trolls, tanggap yan ng mga nagbabayan sa atin. So parang ganun eh. Wala pa talaga, Mr. Chair, na parang control tayo. Halimbawa, meron pa tayong magagawa, halimbawa, sa NPC. Kasi ang NPC ko, Mr. Chair, alam ko, nag-cancel po kayo or nag-suspend po kayo ng website. Tama? Ng mga alternative media. Alam ko, may ganun po kayong ganun po kayong ginawa. So, halimbawa sa ganito po, wala po ba kayong control sa website, halimbawa, SMNI na same pa rin naman po yung content na katulad ng nireklamo natin, red tagging, disinformation, maligning, the reputation ng mga individual. So, ano po ba yung magagawa doon ng NBC, Mr. Chair? Kahit na suspended na, yung 3 years, kahit na suspended na, parang wala silang pakialam. Kahit na suspended kami anyway, andyan na social media, lahat ng mga platform na pwede namin pagpuntahan para magsalita. Na sila dapat ay may control doon sa kanilang no? Sinasabi nila yung mga talents nila na binabayaran nila. So, ay nasabi nila wala silang So, meron po ba ang
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Insofar as that yung concern po na yun, we had an preliminary discussion with the NTRCB and we were advised that yung suspension order po nila includes not only the picture but on other platforms. So if that is the case, Your Honor, should the NTRCB decide to endorse that suspension order to the NTC for suspension on other platforms, perhaps we can consider, the NTC can consider that.
So, ano po kalugdo doon ng NTC? Kasi parang, NTRCB, kasi parang pinapasa ng NTC yung NTRCB. By the way, ito po pang DCAR 1026, saka yung, ito yung radio nila. Suspended din po ba yun?
Yes, Your Honor. Kasama po.
Okay. So, NTRCB na lang.
Yan po, thank you. If the FCRCB decided to suspend or cancel a program in all kinds of media platforms, and said decision is final and executory, we can endorse it to the NTC in order for them to assist us in implementation of the decision.
So, binomonitor niyo po ba yung mga platforms? Kasi ito, meron nga po siyang suspension dahil nga sa mga disinformation and dahil doon sa bakit kailangan ba or hindi yung kanilang franchise. Pero ano po yung ginagawa? Do we need to have yung complaint pa or yung mandate ninyo ay pag-pili po ng pag-monitor?
Upon implementation po, kapag may final and executory decision na po kami, our monitoring and inspection unit po, they make sure po they monitor if nag-air pa rin po yung movie or TV program nila. But honestly po, currently we are amending our charter to include online, on-demand online applications as well as streaming applications for social and other social media platforms to be under our jurisdiction.
So, sige, yun lang sir, makakaasa tayo, no? Dahil sa monitoring ng other platforms based doon sa amendment.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Tila Pancho, the Honorable, yes.
Mr. J, if you still remember Rendon Labrador, yung sa Facebook, marami siyang inawit kinagalit eh. Inilis po siya ng Facebook eh. Maybe we can ask Facebook or TikTok, any resource person from TikTok and Facebook, na mag-invite po natin na kung ano yung guidelines po. Kasi if you remember Rendon Labrador, inawit si Vice Ganda and other celebrities, kinat siya eh.
Okay.
Pwede disciplinary action.
Sige, pag-usapan natin, maybe we can look at legislation for that. Yes, Honorable Kinko.
Yes, pahabol question.
Or go to the last section.
Yes, to the NTC.
NTC.
Yes, may we know how many orders we have issued so far to the SMNI with respect to this issue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your Honor, insofar as this case is concerned, the NTC has issued 2 orders, benefit fees, and the others are resolutions of their motions. So, ito na yung mga nag-issue ng NTC.
So how many issuances total?
2 orders and 2 resolutions, or all in all 4.
And the resolutions are, can you tell us what the resolutions are about?
The resolution on the motion to inhibit, and also the resolution on the motion for the bill of particulars.
And may we request copies of these orders, Mr. Chair?
Thank you very much, the Honorable
Thank you.
Kinko. Just to inform you, early on, that was already a motion that all documents be given and make sure that the Honorable Kinko's office is furnished. All issuances, including the reply of SMNI. Thank you. So, if there are no other items, in the Honorable Pimentel, the Vice Chair would like to again manifest.
Mr. Chair, before we adjourn, I'd like to remind Attorney Tolentino to please advise your principal, Pastor Kibuloy, to attend the next hearing because this committee has already previously issued a subpoena. Failure on his part to appear during the next hearing, this committee might be constrained to issue a contempt order to him. So, pag-advise na lang po para hindi na tayo dumating doon. Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn. Duly seconded. The chairman objection. This committee hearing is hereby adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
House.